If you're following medical advice, taking your medications, restricting your diet, and your blood sugar still doesn't respond the way it should, I want you to hear this clearly. That's not a willpower problem. It's a systems problem. And once you understand which system is disrupted, the entire diabetes approach changes. This training is called How Smart People Reverse Type 2 Diabetes and Why the Usual Advice Fails. I'm Debbie. I spent nearly a decade as an endocrinology nurse practitioner. 8 years ago, I reversed my own prediabetes, and what changed everything wasn't trying harder. It was understanding what was actually driving the problem underneath my blood sugar. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you why lowering blood sugar alone never creates lasting reversal, the hidden metabolic loop that keeps the body stuck, and 3 shifts that allow blood sugar to stabilize as a result, not a fight. Once you see this, these patterns start to make sense. Here's what this looks like in real life. Your fasting blood sugar won't stabilize. Your A1C creeps up despite following every recommendation. Your medication list gets longer, but you don't feel any better. Your weight won't budge no matter how much you exercise or how few calories you eat. Your body responds unpredictably. You can do everything right and still get inconsistent numbers. So if any of this feels familiar, here's the important thing to understand. It's not random, and it's not because you're missing something. Let me show you what's actually happening. No doubt you're doing exactly what the traditional model has trained you to do. Take your metformin, maybe add a GLP-1. Cut your carbs as low as you can tolerate. Track and log every meal. Test your blood sugar multiple times a day. Add a second or third medication when the first stops working. Tighten the rules and hope that something eventually shifts. But here's what keeps happening. Your A1C won't move in the direction you want. Your fasting numbers stay stubbornly elevated. Your medication list expands year after year. Your energy keeps dropping, and the scale is moving in the wrong direction. And the message that you hear most often, try harder. But here's the truth. You're not failing. You've been trying to solve the wrong problem. Traditional medicine treats diabetes as a blood sugar problem. So every tool they give you is designed to lower blood sugar, not fix why the blood sugar is high. And that's where everything breaks down. Because if diabetes were truly just a blood sugar issue, then lowering blood sugar would reverse it. But it doesn't. And that's the proof that the real issue doesn't lie in your discipline or food choices, but somewhere else. When you follow every instruction and you still don't get the results, you're not doing something wrong. You've been pointed in the wrong direction. The real problem is inflammation. Chronic inflammation blocks insulin from doing its job. When insulin can't work, the sugar stays in your bloodstream while your cells which need the sugar are starving. Your weight stays stuck and your energy bottoms out. You're surrounded by sugar that your body can't use. Let me show you exactly what's happening underneath your numbers because this is where everything starts to make sense. This is what I call the metabolic inflammation loop. For most people, it starts in the gut with gut dysbiosis. When the gut is inflamed from stress, medications, restriction, or years of blood sugar swings, it becomes disrupted and permeable. This causes inflammation in your entire body. This leads to blood sugar disruption. Inflammation interferes with insulin, so sugar that your cells need can't get into the cells, and it causes your numbers to rise. Spikes become harder to predict. This leads to inflammatory fat storage. Excess sugar gets stored as fat, especially around the organs. That visceral fat tissue releases even more inflammatory signals, leading to nutrient interference. Inflammation blocks the absorption of key nutrients that your metabolism needs. So even when you're eating right, your cells can't use the fuel efficiently. This leads to increased blood sugar demand. The starved cells ask for more sugar. The blood sugar rises again, and the loop reinforces itself. This is why lowering blood sugar alone doesn't solve the problem, because the system that controls blood sugar is inflamed. And as long as this loop is running, the body keeps compensating no matter how disciplined you are. And this is why the usual strategies eventually fail. Medications plateau, Keto works temporarily and then loses effectiveness. Fasting backfires, and your numbers fluctuate even on perfect days. Not because you were doing them wrong, but because none of them was designed to stop the loop. It's like mopping water off the floor while no one looks up to fix the leak. As long as the leak continues, the water always comes back. Once you recognize that cycle, this belief changes everything. When you break the metabolic inflammation loop, insulin starts working again, and blood sugar stabilizes as a result, not a fight. At that point, focusing only on the blood sugar stops making sense. What does start to make sense is a different sequence. Reversal doesn't happen all at once. It happens in 3 distinct shifts. The first one is where everything actually begins. The first thing that you have to do is to remove the interference, and we do that with the inflammation reset. So now that you understand the real issue driving diabetes and why traditional tools can't fix it, let's talk about how inflammation actually shows up in your body and why this is the starting point for real reversal. Because inflammation follows a very predictable pattern, and when you understand that pattern, the entire picture clarifies. Here's what it looks like in your day-to-day life. High fasting numbers even without eating. Afternoon crashes because your cells aren't getting usable fuel. Loud craving. Your weight stays frozen. These aren't random, they're signals. The mistake most people make is responding with more restriction, more rules, more pressure. So they cut more carbs, eliminate more foods, push harder, increase medications, tighten the rules even more. The problem is that restriction adds stress, and stress worsens inflammation. Also, a stress system can't heal. It inflames further. So instead of improving insulin sensitivity, these strategies increase stress hormones. They drive your blood sugar higher, they amplify inflammation, and they deepen the metabolic dysfunction. And since type 2 diabetes is a metabolic disorder, this is counterproductive. This is why people say, I'm doing everything right and nothing's changing. They're working on the wrong problem. They're mopping harder while the leak is still there. Your metabolism isn't stuck because you need more discipline or fewer carbs or more medication or more restriction. Your metabolism is stuck because inflammation is running the show. And until inflammation drops, insulin cannot function the way you expect it to. But here's the good news. When inflammation calms, everything changes. Insulin works, glucose moves into your cells, the blood sugar stabilizes, energy returns, cravings quiet, and your weight finally becomes responsive because you remove the interference. So you begin with the root cause reversal method, which focuses on healing the gut inflammation axis, because for the vast majority of people with type 2 diabetes, that's where the metabolic leak begins. You do this by identifying and removing gut-driven inflammatory triggers, repairing the gut lining, restoring balance in the microbiome, and reducing metabolic stress so insulin sensitivity can return. This is the foundation. And nothing stabilizes and nothing reverses until inflammation does. This is the first major shift that breaks the cycle that your body's been trapped in. This can sound abstract until you watch how it plays out in real life. So let's talk about Dan, because he's a perfect example of how addressing the root cause transforms everything. He came to me after a hospital scare with an A1C of 6.4. His doctors gave him the standard advice: lose some weight, or if things don't improve, you're going to need medication. When he followed the advice exactly, including a healthy bedtime snack recommended by the dietitian, his blood sugar worsened. After addressing the root cause with the inflammation reset, his fasting dropped below 100, his A1C normalized, his weight began moving, and he had renewed energy. Dan's story shows what happens when you remove the interference. Inflammation drops and the system finally responds. But here's what surprises people. Even when the numbers improve, a metabolism that's been controlled for years doesn't automatically know how to function normally. That's the problem the second shift solves. We need to retrain the metabolism, and we do that through the balance blueprint. This is the phase most people misunderstand. They think, my inflammation is better, I should be done. But a metabolism that's been controlled for years has lost flexibility. It doesn't need more rules, it needs retraining. People say things like, my numbers are better, but they're still unpredictable. Certain foods still spike me and I don't know why. I crash after meals even when I eat right. I'm afraid to change anything because I don't trust my body yet. The scale still won't move even though I'm doing less restriction. This doesn't mean inflammation wasn't the issue. It means your metabolism has become rigid. When people hit this phase, they try to control harder. They tighten rules. They over-monitor numbers. They hesitate to change anything because fear feels safer than instability. But that control creates stress, and stress pulls the metabolism back into survival mode. The problem isn't the food. Blood sugar control was never designed to restore metabolic flexibility. Control feels productive, but it's not the same thing as healing. And this is why early wins don't always last. You don't heal a metabolism by controlling it. You heal a metabolism by retraining it. A rigid metabolism is like a muscle that hasn't been used in years. You don't force it to sprint. You rebuild capacity. That's metabolic flexibility. That's the ability to handle normal meals, stay stable through stress and travel, recover quickly from fluctuations, use fuel efficiently instead of defensively. This is how blood sugar stays stable without constant effort. Carol thought her cravings were a willpower issue, but they weren't. They were a gut imbalance. And once her metabolism was retrained, her cravings disappeared. Food stopped feeling dangerous to her, and her numbers stabilized because she wasn't fighting her body anymore. She was working with it. The balance blueprint is what teaches your metabolism how to live again. It's the phase where people stop stressing about food. Their numbers start making sense. The scale becomes responsive, and their energy stabilizes. Not because you found the perfect diet, but because your metabolism learned how to adapt. This is where people stop managing diabetes and start experiencing freedom. But even with metabolic flexibility, there's one final piece that determines whether this actually lasts. And it has nothing to do with food. Because stability that depends on rules still collapses when life changes. And long-term reversal doesn't come from following my framework forever. It comes from understanding your own body, which brings us to the final shift. The body wisdom method. You need to become the authority, because by this point, inflammation is calmer, your metabolism is more flexible, your numbers are improving, but there's still one question that determines whether this lasts. Who is interpreting your body? You or someone else? Most adults with diabetes have been trained over the years to ignore internal signals and rely on external rules, trust numbers more than patterns, and hand authority over their body to protocols and providers that don't live inside it. So even when things improve, they still feel unsure about what a fluctuation means. They feel anxious about making changes, dependent on plans, protocols, or approval. Afraid that one wrong choice will undo everything. Not because their body is unpredictable, but because they were never taught how to listen. The body has always been communicating, but most people just don't know the language. Here's the trap. People try to achieve independence by following someone else's rules perfectly. But you can't become independent while relying on someone else to interpret your body for you. When life changes, like stress or travel, hormones, progress collapses. Not because you failed, but because you were never taught how to lead. And here's what most programs never teach. Long-term reversal doesn't happen because you follow a method. It happens because you understand your body. Your hunger, your energy, your cravings, your sleep, your blood sugar patterns, these aren't problems. They're data. And once you know how to interpret that data, you stop guessing. Your body stops feeling chaotic and starts feeling like a system you understand. This is where confidence replaces vigilance. Think of your metabolism like a dashboard. Right now, warning lights flash, but no one ever gave you the manual. So you panic, or ignore them, or react too late. The body wisdom method gives you the manual. You learn which signals matter, what they're telling you, and how to respond before problems escalate. That's informed self-leadership. And this is the phase where people stop needing supervision. They can adjust before a spike happens, respond to stress intelligently, make food choices without fear, and maintain results through real life. Not because they're perfect, but because they're fluent in their own body. This is the difference between following a method and leading your health. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. This is what happens when inflammation is removed and the system is allowed to regulate. Since 2020, my A1C has ranged from 5.3 to 5.5 on no medication. This is what happens when the system starts working again. Reversal doesn't require perfection. It requires the right order. Everything we've talked about today comes back to one truth. When you break the metabolic inflammation loop, your body remembers how to regulate blood sugar naturally. You remove the interference, you rebuild adaptability, and you restore authority. That's the difference between managing a condition and solving the system. Now let's pause here for a moment. You don't need more information. If information alone changed outcome, you still wouldn't be dealing with this. You've already invested years and likely thousands of dollars into medications, diets, tracking, and effort. You've done the research. You've followed through. What's been missing isn't effort or intelligence. It's clarity. Clarity about where your body is actually stuck, clarity about what's driving your numbers, and clarity about what sequence would actually make sense for you. And that's what the next step is designed to provide. If this changed how you understand your blood sugar, the next step isn't more information, it's clarity. I offer a short blood sugar consult where we identify exactly where your body stopped responding and why. There's no pressure and no obligation, just answers. You'll find the link below. And if this video helped you, make sure you subscribe. I release new content every week breaking down what actually restores metabolic regulation.